All right, welcome ICS3U folks. Day 1_12 on walkthroughs. We've done some walkthroughs already, but this is going to be a fairly big one. There's going to be one on the test coming up, and as Professor Grease said, it's a pretty important skill, so we're going to practice it. I've went to Edmodo already, and I've fetched this file, walkthroughs file, and I've opened it in WordPerfect. It doesn't matter what one you use, but we're going to just walk through this code and see what it does. And the idea is we're going to have two sections on our table, one for memory and one for screen, and we're just going to go through line by line, following the instructions of the code. So the first thing is this first line. Notice that it declares variables x, y, and big Z, but doesn't do anything else to them. So what I'm going to do, and I can do this in WordPerfect, but I right-click there, and I'm going to split this cell into 3 columns for each of these variables. So there we go. I'm going to have an x, a y, and a big Z. Notice also these are terrible, terrible variable names. Who knows what X, Y, and big Z stand for? That's why you use variable names like student name, age, number of guesses, not just X, Y, and big Z. These are terrible, but this is just a piece of code that we're going to try and figure out. Then the next line sets big Z to be 0. Okay, so fine. Over here, we're going to let big Z be 0. This is happening in memory. And then X is 6 and Y is 20. X is 6 and Y is 20. Now, notice that in some walkthroughs, what we might do to show what commands happen first is this sort of thing, where until this point, X had no value, and then we think of after, big Z still has all these values. But this is going to end up being a pretty big program, so I'm going to squish this back so I can actually get most of this on the screen at the same time. All right, but if by all means, because this isn't, you're not wasting paper or anything like that. If that makes more sense for you to space it out like that, so you can see this thing happened first, and then this line, and then this line, by all means you can. And then, so we've done check, 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 done this over here, and now we're entering a loop. The do is just the first command in the loop to show that we're having a loop, and then it's this command. Remember what this is. Y plus equals x is equivalent to this statement here. So the computer is going to take y plus x, whatever that is. It's going to calculate that y plus x, and then reassign that to y. So y plus x, and reassign that to y. So now y is going to be equal to 26. Okay, now I'm going to delete this off just so I can see what's going on. This is going to be quite some time. And then notice it enters a for loop. For loop. So it says for int z equals 1. Uh-oh. This line here declares and initializes. Declares means puts in memory. Initialize means gives it a starting value, another variable. So in my memory, I have to, and I'm going to split this one into 2 columns. Maybe space this out a little bit nicer. Hopefully, you could just use the space bar, by the way, but Z gets put into memory and then has the initial value 1. Okay. And then we check the condition. Is Z less than or equal to 5? It certainly is. So we're going to perform the loop, the inside loop. So it says c.println Z plus /t plus y. Well, what is that going to print out? It's going to print the value of Z and then a tab. So I know in WordPerfect I can't use the tab in a table, so I'm just going to put a few spaces. I think a tab in Java is 5 or 6 spaces. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Z is 1, a tab, and then Y. It's going to print out 26. And so that should be the first printout. And then what is it going to do? It's going to go big Z equals little z. So now it's going to take the value of little z, which is 1, and assign it to big Z. So that becomes 1 now. And then it gets to the end of the loop, goes back up here, increment Z. So then it performs this, increment Z, and prints out 2 there. And it makes that 2. Checks the condition. Is Z less than or equal to 5? It certainly is. So it means it's going to do the inside again. It's going to print out Z, which is now 2, a tab, and then the Y value. Notice the Y value hasn't changed, so this is just going to print out a 2 and 26 again. Then it's going to reassign big Z as the little z value. All right, what is that doing? Well, we have no idea, but it's just code that we're trying to predict what it does. And then it gets to the end of the for loop, does the increment, bam, does the increment, checks the condition. Is Z 3 less than or equal to 5? It certainly is, so it's going to go in and do the loop again. So you get the idea of this inside loop. This is going to go 3 and then 26. Increment big Z to 3 because little z is equal to 3 here. Get to the end of the loop, increment little z, check the condition. Is 4 less than or equal to 5? It certainly is, so it's going to do the loop again. It's going to do the loop again, which is to print out first. Reassign little z to big Z, make those two things equal. Get to the end of the loop, increment. Now, checks the condition. Is Z less than or equal to 5? Yes, it is, because it's equal to 5, so it's actually going to do this again. It's going to print out 5, 26, and then big Z is going to equal to little z. And then it gets to the end of the loop, increments to 6, and then checks the condition. This condition is false, so it conks out. And in fact, when it conks out, it ends the loop. This actually gets returned, and this memory gets sort of lost and returned back to the computer. So I'm going to just put a little equal sign that this memory is gone here. If you had a piece of paper, you might put a big cross through that it's not there anymore. And then the next line, what's the next line? Well, it just conked out of the loop. So then it's going to perform that. Remember, what does the x plus plus mean? X plus plus means x equals x plus 1, right? So it takes the x value, it's 6, and adds 1 to it to make 7. So now x is going to be 7. Great. Now what? Well, it just keeps going. We just keep going. From there, goes to the end of the loop. So now it goes while, and it checks the condition. Is y less than or equal to 30? Indeed, it is less than or equal to 30. It's equal to 26. So since this is true, then it's going to zoom back up here at the start of the loop, and it's going to perform this command again, which is, remember, y equals y plus x. Y equals y plus x. So that means y is going to be calculated as 26 plus the new value of x is 7. It's going to be equal to 33. Okay, fine and dandy. And then it starts into this inside loop again. Phew. And on the inside loop again, it's going to run this for loop. So now it's going to reassign, reinitialize, and redeclare a variable z, starts it at 1, checks the condition, it's true, and it starts printing out these silly print line statements again. So z is 1 again, so it's going to print out 1, and then over here a tab, and the new y value. The new y value is 33. And then it starts going through these, right? So you can see how it's probably going to print out the same 5 lines since it's got the same conditions. You know, big Z is going to start at 1 after the print line, and then it's going to go up every time we have a new line. This is going to be, and then here it's going to be 2, and then it's going to increment and check the condition. It's going to still be true for a little bit longer here still, and I'm starting to get tired of this. Oops, I forgot to increment my Z. There we go. And then it's going to get to the end of the loop, increment Z, print out the new line for 33. assign that to big Z, get to the end of the loop, increment Z, print out, because it's still true, condition's still true, assign the thing to big Z again, increment to 6 here, then check the condition, conk out right there, and then X, and then release Z back into memory, cross that out again, and then the next line is it's going to execute as this. So it's going to take the old X value, which was 7, add 1 to it, and reassign it into X, which means increment X by 1, and then check the condition. While Y is less than or equal to 30. Well, Y is 33. This is now false. So at that point, the while loop fails, it's false, and so it conks out of that while loop. And then it runs this command. It says c.println x plus tab plus blah, blah, blah. So it's going to print out the x value. Well, what's the x value? 8. A tab. Then the y value is 33. A tab. And what's big Z? Well, it just looks it up in the table. What's the last value that big Z had? Big Z was 5. And this tab on the end, who knows what that's there for, but then it ends. Should end the program. Done. And try it. I'm not going to do that. You try it. You can run that code and see if you get that as your output. This is the walkthrough. This was what happened in memory, and of course the computer does it a lot faster than us. Next, time for you to practice these on your own. So it said on the website, the next thing is to do is, you're watching this video, the link here is going to be there when you're reading this. Do the exercise, chapter 4 of the Java text. So on Edmodo, our Java text is, where is it? Right here, Java text. We've been using this a lot. Chapter 4 is right. There's chapter 4. So we're going to do exercise, conditional loops, blah, 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 do while loops, counters, examples, example, exercises. So we want to do exercise 4. It says, without typing these programs into the computer, predict the exact output of all the following sections of Java code. So we want to do a walkthrough for this thing. So how am I going to do that? In my note, you can do all these exercises in this note. So down here somewhere, we're going to go exercise 4A. I'm going to insert a table. Where's my table create, and I'm just going to make it 2 columns, 2 rows to start. 2 columns, 2 rows. So this is memory, and then output. And you're going to have to look back and forth, of course. See, what's nice is if you're getting good at these, you can, well, that's not what we want. Where do we want it? If you're getting good at these, you can sort of look through and say, oh, I'm going to need a count variable. Looks like I'm going to need a product variable, and that's all I'm going to need. That's going to be fine. And so here, then I can split the memory into 2 columns, and I'm going to have my count variable, and what was it, product variable? Was it product? Yes, and then the output. And walk through changing the values in memory and doing the output. A couple of easy ones, and then I think the exercise 2 might be a little bit harder. I don't know. That's why, probably harder, so that's why I did it last. So 4B is going to be here, make a table, exercise 2A, and so on to 2B, 2C, etc. Okay, so you do those now. Any extra time you get in the period, you're working on your programming assignment. We're fixing up old stuff, but probably working on the programming assignment.